You know what's wild? We live in a culture that has completely confused anxiety with confidence. And I'm not talking about the obvious stuff here. I'm not talking about the person who's clearly shaking before a presentation or the one who stammers through small talk. No, I'm talking about behaviors that we've been taught to celebrate, to aspire to see as the gold standard of self-assurance. These are the things that make people go, wow, I wish I had their confidence, when really what they're witnessing is someone's nervous system in complete overdrive. Let me start with the first one. And this might sting a little because I see this everywhere, especially in professional settings and on social media. It's what I call performative over-preparation. You know this person. Maybe you are this person. They're the one who shows up to every meeting with a color-coded binder, 17 backup plans, and has rehearsed their talking points so thoroughly they could recite them in their sleep. They never seem caught off guard. They always have an answer. They appear unflappable, completely in control. And here's what everyone thinks. Wow, they're so confident. They're so prepared. They really have their act together. But what's actually happening underneath is pure distilled anxiety masquerading as competence. Real confidence doesn't need 17 backup plans. Real confidence can handle uncertainty. Real confidence can say, I don't know, but I'll find out, without having a complete meltdown. The over-preparer is operating from a place of deep fear. Fear of being caught unprepared. Fear of looking stupid. Fear of not having control. So they create this armor of preparation, this fortress of information and contingency plans. And yes, it often leads to good outcomes. They do well in meetings. They impress people. They get promoted. But at what cost? They're exhausted. They spend hours preparing for conversations that should be natural. They can't improvise. They can't handle curveballs. And most tellingly, they feel like frauds because deep down, they know their success isn't coming from confidence. It's coming from anxiety-driven hypervigilance. I worked with a woman once, let's call her Sarah, who was the VP of marketing at a tech company. Everyone saw her as this incredibly confident leader. She commanded rooms. She never stumbled over words. She had data for everything. But in our sessions, she revealed that she spent every Sunday in a state of panic, preparing for the week ahead. She would create detailed scripts for casual conversations with colleagues. She would research the personal interests of people she might encounter in the elevator. She lived in constant fear that someone would ask her something she didn't know, and her entire identity would crumble. That's not confidence. That's anxiety wearing a very convincing mask. The second thing we mistake for confidence is what I call aggressive certainty. This is the person who never backs down from an argument, who always has strong opinions, who speaks with unwavering conviction about everything from politics to where to get the best pizza. They dominate conversations. They interrupt. They bulldoze through other people's perspectives with the force of their own beliefs. And again, our culture reads this as confidence. We think, wow, they really know who they are. They stand up for what they believe in. They're not afraid to ruffle feathers. But here's what's really happening. Truly confident people don't need to be right all the time. They don't need to dominate every conversation. They can hold space for uncertainty, for other perspectives, for the possibility that they might be wrong. Aggressive certainty is actually anxiety about being seen as weak, as uninformed, as someone whose opinion doesn't matter. It's the nervous system's fight response kicked into overdrive. These people have learned, usually early in life, that the way to stay safe is to be the loudest voice in the room. To never show doubt, to always have the last word. But underneath all that bluster is a terrified person who's convinced that the moment they show any uncertainty, they'll be dismissed, overlooked, or abandoned. I think about this guy I knew in college. Let's call him Marcus. He was the person everyone thought of as supremely confident. He had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. He could argue about anything for hours. People either loved him or found him exhausting. But nobody questioned his confidence. But I remember this one moment during finals week when I found him in the library at 3 a.m., having what I now recognize was a panic attack. He told me he felt like he was constantly performing, constantly having to prove he belonged, constantly afraid that if he ever admitted he didn't know something, people would realize he was just faking it. That's the thing about aggressive certainty. It's exhausting to maintain. Real confidence is actually quite quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself constantly. It can say, I might be wrong about this, without feeling like the world is ending. The third one is probably the most insidious because it looks the most like what we think confidence should be. It's what I call relentless positivity. This is the person who's always upbeat, always finding the silver lining, always pushing through with a smile. They never complain. They never seem to have bad days. They're the ones posting inspirational quotes on LinkedIn and telling everyone that every setback is just a setup for a comeback. And we eat this up. We think, they're so resilient, they're so positive, they have such a healthy mindset. But here's the reality. Authentic confidence includes the full spectrum of human emotion. It doesn't require you to be positive all the time. It doesn't demand that you find meaning in every single struggle, or that you maintain an upbeat attitude in the face of legitimate problems. Relentless positivity is often anxiety about being seen as negative, as a burden, as someone who brings others down. These people have learned that their value comes from being the person who lifts others up, who never needs support, who can handle anything with a smile. But that's not confidence. That's people-pleasing disguised as resilience. I think about my client Jessica, who was known in her company as the most positive person in the office. She was the one people went to when they were having a bad day. She never missed a deadline, never complained about workload, never seemed stressed. But when she came to see me, she was on the verge of burnout. She told me she felt like she wasn't allowed to have bad days, wasn't allowed to struggle, because her entire identity was built around being the positive one. She was terrified that if she ever showed vulnerability or admitted she was struggling, people would stop valuing her. That's not confidence. That's anxiety about not being enough as you naturally are. Here's what real confidence actually looks like, and it might surprise you because it's so much quieter than what we've been taught to recognize. Real confidence is comfortable with uncertainty. It can say, I don't know, without feeling shame. It can admit mistakes without feeling like a fraud. It can ask for help without feeling weak. Real confidence doesn't need to dominate conversations or always be right. It can listen to other perspectives and actually change its mind when presented with new information. It's not threatened by other people's expertise or success. Real confidence includes the full range of human emotions. It can have bad days without questioning its worth. It can struggle without losing its sense of self. It can be vulnerable without feeling like it's falling apart. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. Real confidence is often mistaken for something else entirely. The truly confident person might seem less impressive at first glance. They're not the loudest in the room. They're not the most prepared. They're not always positive. They might seem ordinary, unremarkable even, but watch them over time. Notice how they handle unexpected challenges with curiosity rather than panic. See how they can disagree with someone without making it personal. Watch how they can admit when they're wrong without their world falling apart. Notice how they can be genuinely supportive of others' success without feeling diminished by it. That's what we should be aspiring to. Not the performance of confidence, but the real thing. And the real thing is built not on having all the answers or never feeling afraid, but on having a secure relationship with yourself that doesn't require constant external validation or control. The path from anxiety-based behaviors to real confidence is on about eliminating preparation, or never having strong opinions or always being negative. It's about examining the motivation behind these behaviors. Are you over-preparing because you enjoy being thorough, or because you're terrified of being caught off guard? Are you arguing because you're passionate about the topic, or because you need to prove you're smart? Are you staying positive because you genuinely feel optimistic, or because you're afraid of being seen as difficult? The difference is everything. And recognizing it is the first step toward building the kind of confidence that doesn't exhaust you, doesn't require constant performance, and doesn't crumble the moment things don't go according to plan. Because here's what I've learned after years of working with people who seem to have it all together. The most confident appearing people are often the most anxious inside. And the people who are truly confident? They're usually too busy living their lives authentically to worry about whether they look confident to others. The goal isn't to never feel anxious. The goal is to build a relationship with yourself that's so solid, so accepting, that you don't need anxiety to masquerade as confidence anymore. You can just be who you are, uncertainty and all, and trust that it's enough.